welcome to another episode of Chris and Jen in the Morning,
where it's always morning somewhere.
I'm Chris.
And I'm still Jen. We're excited to have you with us today.
We are. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
So, Jen, I was just complimenting you on this beautiful blue shirt, and you said that you bought it for a specific reason.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I think blue is definitely my color, right? I'm not I tend to get uncomfortable wearing color, but I actually got this shirt in Ireland when I was in Ireland for a work trip, and I actually picked it in part because blue is a safe color for me. I know that it typically does look good on me, but also it was like the least bright shirt in the store because everything there, like all of the clothes, were incredibly colorful. And while that was beautiful to look at, and I think everyone walking around just looks so lovely, I just feel like if I am in bright colors, that is a lot of attention. And it amps up my awkwardness factor to like a 10x. So here I was in Ireland, and the reason I had to buy this sweater in Ireland is because we were there for, I don't know, it was, I don't think a week even. It was several days, and I checked a bag because I wanted to bring home some stuff from Ireland that you can't carry on a plane. So like, you know, they make some great whiskey in Ireland in particular, and I wanted to bring some home. And I happened to be flying to New York first to meet up with some of my coworkers and then take that flight into Shannon because we were out in the west of Ireland. So it was easier than flying through Dublin. And flying through JFK, there are certain terminals that don't, like, like if you go from one terminal to another, you have to go out of security and back through.
Oh, it's a whole process,
I didn't book my own flight, and I wasn't paying attention to any of this. And my layover was pretty slim, and I had to go out of security, ride the train, and then back through security and get on my flight. Now, I'm not one that likes to spend a ton of time at the airport, but I certainly don't ever want to hear my name called. And they were not only calling my name while I was still trying to get through security, so I had no idea. When I finally sprinted to the gate, I was asking because I had not only switched like terminals, but switched airlines because I was flying domestic to New York and then international on Aer Lingus, like on a red-eye flight. It was just not ideal situation for me. Not Aer Lingus, lovely airline. It's the like national airline of Ireland, but there was not like a premium experience here for an overnight red-eye flight. And I asked them specifically, my bag, I've checked a bag, is it going to show up? And they were like, yes, we've got it. We'll watch for it. We'll make sure it shows up. So I get through this overnight flight. So we get into the airport a little bit early in Shannon. And my coworkers are thinking, great, we'll get back to the hotel early. We'll have a chance to lay down for an hour before and then refresh before we have to go into the office all day. Because, like, none of us slept on the plane. So, you know, we're all minus all of the sleep. So anyhow, long story, a little less long. There's like 10 people in all of the airports. They all came off of our plane. And there's no bag there for me. And I had put my clothes, I had packed one because I like filled the suitcase with filler, like packing filler. Because I just didn't have as much stuff, right? And but I did put clothes in that bag because I wanted something to be in it because I didn't want to check an empty suitcase.
You were going to wear them.
So, I have learned a thing or two about traveling, but also my suitcase just didn't show up. So I had one change of clothes and that was it. But I really had a lot of optimism about the fact that my suitcase was going to show up.
Okay, love
And
that.
so I had to go to the store and buy an outfit, but I just went to the store and bought an outfit every day because I didn't want to lean in and buy, you know, multiple outfits and thereby like admit to myself that I was gonna not get my suitcase. It did finally show up the day that I was leaving.
Of course it did. Of course it did. However,
So
had you gone to the store and bought all the clothes that you needed to get through that trip, it would have showed up that day. Because that's just the universal law.
That's what I should have done. But I do love this sweater, so it did give me an opportunity to bring back a lovely sweater from the Dunn's store, department store in Ireland. And I also had the wonderful experience of just doing everyday shopping and everyone knowing that I needed help going to the store to buy clothes because I checked a bag and didn't have any clothes to wear.
Was it the same store every time that you went back to?
Yeah, it was.
It's all right.
You know, creature of habit. I've figured this out. I've adventured this far. This is my comfort zone.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you found some good stuff because you still wear it, so...
I did. It's a very comfortable sweater. In fact, there are some items that I purchased that I was like, I want to buy these. Like, these are what I want to have. And I have not been able to figure out how to buy them. So I need to like go back.
Yep.
I haven't been to Ireland since this trip. So I need to go back and just make some purchases. Because I can't get those brands over here.
Well, it works out. You got your luggage back in time for you just to take it right back to the airport.
Yeah, so that was great. Speaking of travel, we have like everyday travel in commuting that we do, and I was actually reading that there's a lot of stuff going on with congestion pricing for traffic in New York. Is that like impacting you at all?
Not us specifically because we take we use the subways and buses to get around, so it's not really impacting us there. I guess like there are more people on public transportation because of this congestion pricing. So basically what they did is if you're going into the city anywhere below 60th Street, there is like now a charge. I think originally it was supposed to be like $15 or maybe even more than that, where they've come to is $9. So there are some things like when you take an Uber, I saw.
Like, do they just like stop you? Do they have cameras? Is it
yeah?
Like
I mean, it's just
bridge?
like any other like toll road that you would take. There's like,
but it's every road that goes south below 60th.
So when you come into the city, you're usually coming by bridge, by tunnel, something like that. And so that's where you're getting charged. So if you're coming in.
So if you're already on Manhattan, the island of Manhattan.
You still get charged. Like if you're going down below 60th,
so if you're like
charged.
on the upper east or the upper west side and you're traveling down.
Yeah.
Like down Broadway. And you go past 60th Street, you get charged.
You're going to get charged,
is this just like it reads your plates and charges you?
I mean, it works just like any other toll road. So here we call them easy passes. I forget what they were called in Texas.
But do they really have like toll cameras set up at every single road?
Yeah. Well, like once you hit those like spots. So just like whenever you're getting on a toll road, like
they just went down 60th Street, east to west, and said, putting in toll cameras here. Oh my goodness. When did they do this?
Well, there was a lot of back and forth on it. Whenever it was first being rolled out, there was a lot of controversy because people who live outside of the city, like in New Jersey, Staten Island, like folks were going to be impacted. And look, there has been a lot more traffic since the pandemic because people don't want to take public transportation. They don't want, you're crammed in, packed with strangers and You never know
So it's
what
like you
someone may
drive past
have.
this line and it's just $9.
Yep. Yep. But it has worked. Like they have seen a significant amount of less traffic
Oh.
into that area. Which is picked up. So those who still commute and drive in, they are actually seeing. I have a colleague who lives further out in New Jersey, and she was telling me like before it used to take her like 3 hours to get to the office when she would come in. She would drive in, but
I will never complain about my time commute anymore.
I take it all back. But then she was saying that she came in, I think it was last week, and it only took her like an hour and a half. And she was like, if that's all it's going to take, I don't mind coming in more often.
Wow.
So like, careful what you put out in the world. But yeah, it's definitely worked, but it's caused just so much controversy with the other municipalities around New York City because people just feel like it's not fair. Like you're already paying to use the tunnel.
If you're taking like an Uber or a Lyft or a rideshare vehicle from up north to down south, your trip is just that much more expensive. It's like $9 more expensive.
Yep. So like whenever we go from where we live in Queens into the city, we usually ask that they use the Manhattan Bridge, or not Manhattan, the Queensboro Bridge at Koch, because there's no toll charge for that. Now there's the congestion pricing for it. So peak hours is $9, and then I think just so it's like off hours it's less.
You should take the subway in down below 60th Street and then get a car.
Yeah, I mean it's just
then, like why get a car if you're
so yeah. But like we don't drive, we don't really take Ubers.
We usually don't take a car when we're in the city, except for if we're going all the way out and we have luggage or something, or if we're like late.
Well, even then, like I would like it used to be like
traffic.
Like pre-pandemic, we would say jump in an Uber, it'll go faster. But now, like recent years, I would absolutely not take the subway. Like you will get there faster because of the traffic. So. But it's all relative. I do have to
say, I envy the ability. So I know there's like a whole germ thing. I know whenever we're there, I am with you all, so I don't have to worry about the fact that I have zero concept of time or space, and so I don't know which way I'm going or where I'm at, and I come off the subway and I'm very confused. And I'm lost, and then I'm looking lost because you can see it on my face, which makes me entirely vulnerable. And the police officer is usually stopping me, saying, "Ma'am, do you need help?"
And that's if they're a truly perceptive and kind police officer.
Also, ma'am,
hey, it's a
found
term
them to really be New York's finest. Like they have offered me help before, but you give me very great instructions, and yet I still struggle. And then also there's like the touching of things that you have to do when you travel by yourself, whereas when you travel with people who adore you, they will touch the things for you and you just show up.
So you hold on to them so that you don't have to hold on to other things.
I sure do. And sometimes I do sit down and then I have to do a lot of mental work to not think about it. Not because I think that subways are just terribly dirty. I feel the same way about airports, by the way. Like travel germs are the scariest kinds of germs.
Yeah.
Because have you ever seen somebody with a bucket and a mop cleaning things in the subway car? I sure haven't. Have you ever seen somebody cleaning those chairs at the airport? I sure haven't.
I will say that when I lived on the Upper East Side, when they opened up the train line up there, it was the end of the line. So yes, I have seen people with buckets and brooms cleaning them up, but it's definitely an end of the line type of experience.
An end of the line type of a thing. Yeah, it's just, there's just so many people come through and they're not all as conscious about, cleanliness. And so that's a challenge. But also, it's super convenient because you can do all kinds of things while you're traveling, as opposed to like when I'm driving, I can't like do much of.
You actually have to pay attention when you're driving.
Yeah. I can do less things than other people can do while I drive. And so, actually, one of the things that happened to me this week, I was driving into work, and all of a sudden I started having this like sneezing attack. Has that
Oh,
ever happened to you? Like you're driving and you just are like, you start sneezing?
I'm sure I have. I'm like the type of person I can't just sneeze once, like I do like 3 or 4 sneezes in a row. So I'm sure I have, but like nothing that I guess that ever made me feel unsafe or
Yeah.
like,
So when you sneeze, do
uh,
you close your eyes? Do you sneeze with your eyes open?
no. Does anyone
Like, is
sneeze with
that
their eyes
even
open?
possible to sneeze with your eyes open? I think your eyes closed because, you don't want to pop them out of your head. It's like protective.
Huh.
So here I am and I'm driving in traffic and all of a sudden this sneeze is coming and I can feel it coming and I'm trying to make it not come because I'm well, first of all, like it wasn't my car. It was a loaner car from the dealer because my car was getting worked on. And so I had no Kleenexes in this car.
Oh, okay.
Second, I don't want to sneeze germs all over the car. So I have no Kleenexes in
So
the car. There's
kind of
probably
you.
somewhere in a little pouch inside my purse, but I'm driving. And so I can't go digging
Right.
for a Kleenex in a little travel bag in a pouch somewhere in my purse. Like, this is bad. And all the while trying not to sneeze. But the sneeze just comes and I'm in Dallas traffic and I'm going, oh no, this is going to be a problem. And it's raining, by the way. And, the roads aren't built for rain here and the people aren't used to it. And there are
Yeah.
actually parts of the highway that I was like, is this a turnaround drown situation? Like, there is standing water across the whole highway and yet everybody's driving through it. But anyways, here I am all of the sudden sneezing and you get the one sneeze. And I have reached that age in life. I have a kid in college. So I'm probably not as young as you might think, where there is some concentration that has to happen when you sneeze because
Because
you
it's
don't
not
want to
just the sneeze that you're trying to control.
you don't want to pee your pants.
That's right. Real talk.
It's a thing that happens. So you have to just pay attention. And as long as you're paying attention, everything's fine. But if that sneeze catches you so off guard that you didn't know it was coming and you didn't just squeeze everything, you
Engage
might
your
as well
core.
turn around and don't drown. So I start sneezing and I'm like, oh my gosh, should I pull over? But I'm in the left lane on the congested highway traffic. Should I pull over to finish sneezing? Is that even like less safe than sneezing while driving? And I'm just going, I really hope I don't, run into somebody
Yeah.
because, my eyes just keep shutting
Closing.
while I'm sneezing. Forget the germs on the steering wheel. I'm like, they're your own germs, Jen. So like we can clean this up later. And what occurred to me is like, why does no one talk about this?
Why is this not something we are prepared for, people?
Like, why is it that I am sitting here sneezing on the highway going, this is like dangerous?
What should I
And
do?
yet, no one talks about this. They talk about like, don't text while driving, don't talk while driving, don't, clearly don't eat while driving, don't watch TV while you drive.
But I do think like those are things like that you can control within your environment. Like a sneeze you can't control.
I mean, I'm not saying they would say don't sneeze while driving. I'm just, why has no one talked about, like, I actually was thinking, Jen, I think it's going to be okay because I've never actually heard anyone tell a story about how they got into a wreck because they were sneezing. But then I also was wondering, like, is this a thing that's happened?
I mean,
so
there's the call to action for this episode. Has
what
anyone
I'd
ever
really
had
love
an
to
accident?
know from all of you is, one, is anyone else as concerned about this as I am? Like, have you had this experience where you're just terrified that you're going to have a sneeze take you out of nowhere and then all of a sudden you're going to crash into somebody? And I know you keep a safe distance. I'm fully aware when driving, but also have you been in Dallas traffic? It's like pretty crazy. And two, like, what do you do? What do you do if you are caught in a sneezing fit? What do you do? So I'd love to hear from you.
I just have to say real quick that the way that we collect ideas for topics of this stuff is we have a shared running list that we go in and add. And so throughout the week, like I'm going in as I'm thinking of things, throwing it on. And we're only writing stuff, right, that like makes sense to us, because we also want the opportunity to have like the authentic reaction of the conversation. When I went in this week to add something to the list and I saw you add this, I started laughing out loud for two reasons. One, like just the way you had written it was funny to me. But second,
sneezing while driving. Why does no one talk about these dangers?
Why does nobody talk about these things? Like I have your voice in my head, and so that's what I'm thinking. But then, like I do start thinking about it, right? And I'm like, why don't we talk about this? Like, why are we not having that conversation? So I'm glad. I'm glad that you added it on there. I got really a good laugh out of it.
Like appropriate, right? I mean, it's a question we all should be asking. Right. What do you do if you get into a sneezing fit while you're driving?
Because you need a plan. Whenever you have a plan, you can work the plan, and like it just is better.
Yeah. And if you happen to be a like driving safety instructor, all the better. I would absolutely love your advice.
Yeah.
So I'd love your advice. So the other thing that I was doing while driving this week was listening to this podcast, and I sometimes I listen to music in the morning, sometimes I listen to nothing. That's when like all of the thought streams are just really loud and coming at me from all angles, and I'm having trouble sorting out all the conversations happening at once in my own head. Or sometimes I want to drown that out with music, but sometimes it's like an hour plus drive into the office and home from the office. And so sometimes I just like to, kind of listen to a podcast. And because if I listen to an audio book, I think we've talked about this before. Like, I just can't do it. You have to hear like every word of the book. But if you listen to a podcast, it's like a radio morning show. It's like banter back and forth or conversation. And so sometimes when I'm in this, like, hey, let's do an enrichment, sort of activity and use this time sitting in the car for my own betterment, I will listen to a podcast that I feel is going to bring me something that will enrich my life. Yeah. And so I was listening to this. I had listened to, I love to listen to Oprah Super Soul Sundays, but not all of the episodes, just some of them, because some of them lean a little bit, kind of into topics that I'm like, I'm not ready for that. On the way into work, though, I was listening to her conversation with Sheryl Sandberg, who wrote a book more recently about the experience of getting through her husband's death and finding joy again. And let me just tell you, it is a fantastic conversation. And also probably not one you want to listen to on your way into work if you are at all vulnerable to other people's heart-wrenching emotional stories, unless you were fine walking into work looking like you had just cried. So it's
just a heads up.
Fantastic. Totally recommend you listen to it. So I had listened to, kind of the last podcast that had just come out. She actually did an episode with Alanis Morissette, which I found to be really enlightening. There's a lot I don't know about Alanis Morissette. So that was interesting. And I was like, what else should I listen to? And I'd been hearing these like ads in the podcast for this podcast called The Optimist Project with Yara Shahidi, I think is her name. And I actually work with Yara, and I was like, somebody else named Yara. I bet she's pretty interesting because this is a unique name. And so she had Dr. Laurie Santos on her podcast, the one that I ended up listening to, who is a psych professor at Yale, and has taught, I think it was quoted as the most popular course in all of Yale history, or like in 200 years or something insane like that. Dr. Laurie Santos seems like a pretty impressive woman. So I was like listening to this podcast, and at the beginning of the podcast, they were kind of talking about optimism, of course, because it's called the Optimism Project, but also about hope and the difference between optimism and hope, which I found to be really interesting. And I'll paraphrase, but basically my takeaway is that the difference between optimism and hope is that optimism is just kind of the belief that things are going to get better. So, it's more of like an external factor that, or you might even say like magical thinking, like things will just get better. It'll be fine.
Right.
Whereas hope is a belief that things are going to get better and an understanding of a path forward on how to get there. So I thought that was really interesting because the way that I have always heard the word hope used was like in this context of you just hope for something, but it's more of like that external factor.
Yeah.
And so I really had a hard time connecting with, this idea of hope and what really is hope. And, I had a whole infertility journey that was really hard. And for 10 years, struggled through that and, didn't end up the way that I wanted it to end up. But hope is something that as you go through, whether it's infertility or just like the, motherhood, and trying to, to achieve that. Or I guess it's not just for moms. I just happen to be the mom. So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah.
Hope is something that's like really relevant to that conversation. And so it really struck me that all these years, like this is a concept that I had really been interacting with. And yet, I never heard this explanation or this idea that the difference between optimism and hope is optimism is it's just going to work out. And hope is like, I believe it will work out and I see what I can do to help influence that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I want to know more about this. And I ran across this article that I think was paraphrasing one of, or kind of recapping one of Dr. Laurie Santos's lectures. I think she was guest lecturing at Harvard. And the article is actually about happiness. So there's hope, there's optimism, and then there's happiness, and they're all kind of, interrelated. And so the article is actually called The Path to Healthier Thought Patterns. And I know I sent this to you to take a look at, so I'm really interested to hear what your point of view on this whole article was. But just to kind of set it up, the premise here is like in our search for happiness, the way that you're managing your headspace really does make a difference in how you experience life and in your ability to be happy. And then also, of course, because, these are like renowned professors teaching at Ivy League schools and folks, the audience in Ivy League schools, they're tying this back to then what does that mean from a results standpoint,
right?
Which was really interesting to me. And, I believe in therapy. I think it's a great practice. And we happen to know the therapist that I go see, both of us, and he says to me constantly, and it so annoys me, well, Jen, happiness comes from within. And every time he says that, he's the most wonderful person. But I just want to throw something because I tell him all the time, I'm like, when you say that, what I feel is guilty then that I can't manage my own headspace in a better way because this really sucky thing is happening that's really legitimately hard. And yet I'm not happy. So what I hear is it's my own fault. And he's like, well, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm like, but that's what I'm hearing. And so this article was really interesting to me because it's like this concept of happiness can be something that you actually can influence and bring into your life, even if the circumstances suck. And not only just optimistically, you can achieve it, but from a hope standpoint, here are some practical things that you can actually do to bring yourself back to a place of happiness when life around you is, kind of giving you lemons.
Yeah, I agree. When you sent this to me, I had opened this And I saw how long it was, and I was like, okay,
This is a lot.
I gotta schedule time for this.
This is a lot.
And so I had put it off for a couple of days, and so when I picked it up, I found myself in like a moment where I wasn't inundated. I wasn't like I guess more in a reflective state, like opportunity to truly take it in, process, and kind of sit with it. I will say at one point in this article, like it brought tears to my eyes because I found it insightful for myself. Like I have, I started like, going to therapy when I was in my early-ish mid-20s. And I think that was the first time that I truly started to get insight on like internal dialogue. And I had never really thought about it until I had someone who could help on the journey. So as I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this, but I've never had a framework. I've been doing this, but didn't know like that others, like, not that I think like I'm special, I'm the only one going through stuff, but it's just, I feel like internal dialogues are so specific to people and what they're going through. And so to actually see on a piece of paper that like others needed this type of help, direction, insight, like, I don't know, like it was just kind of refreshing and also like optimistic. Like, I am on a journey with many more people than I probably think I am.
Might I suggest hopeful?
Yeah, hopeful. Absolutely.
Because it gives you like the practical ways to actually get yourself to that better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I loved it. I really liked the way at the end where they just summarized everything and kind of pulled it through. So whenever I was going back to read it again and kind of like pull some notes together, like that's the framework in which I was like, okay, I'll top line a few of these things and then pull in some stuff that like really stood out to me. So
yeah, so let's talk about this and break it down, because I went to print it, and of course my printer is just perpetually out of ink. I don't even know how, because we don't print anything because we're always replacing the ink or cleaning the ink cartridge, but nothing ever gets printed. But it's always out of ink. I don't like, it is illogical how the printer literally is just never in a place that can be printed. But probably good, because it was 10 pages.
Yeah,
it would have printed out 10 pages.
I will say
you printed it.
Funny. We both tried to print it. But actually, I guess because of the way the article is posted or whatever, you can't. It won't let you, because I even tried saving it as a PDF so that I could like mark it up.
It did.
In PDF form.
It let me. It sent it to the printer, but it was like,
it lets you send it
here.
Ink. I actually have it right here. This is what it ended up coming out looking like.
Oh, like blank paper. That's cool.
Yeah, for real.
That's cool. All right. Well, we'll link in the comments, so we'll check it out. But we're also just going to give you the highlights, because I did have to read this through a few times. Like, It's great content. It is like you have to chew through it. It's not like lightheartedly written, although well written. It's basically like, think about if you were to attend a lecture and you're going to get through all of the content in this lecture. And so it was great written. It was great written. That's nice. Thank you.
And that is great English. Thank you.
My Ivy League ready speaking abilities here. It is very well written, but it is the right word is not heavy, because the whole point of the article is to bring happiness and levity, but it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Like, it gives you a lot. Yes, it gives you a lot to think about.
So we're going to break those down here. So the first section starts talking about like rumination and catastrophizing. And you like basically how thoughts impact your feelings. Which, I think, if you've ever been to therapy, they have probably talked to you about the model of thoughts, feelings, and actions. And I think sometimes they call it a circle. I like to think about it as a triangle. I think a triangle is a really great tool. I use triangle tools with different things on them all the time, but it's like the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions, and they're all connected to each other. But
Yep.
when you're stuck in your thoughts and your feelings, you take an action to get yourself moving in a different direction. When you're acting in a certain way and you're feeling a certain way, maybe you need to change your thinking. And so this, article, I kind of have that in the back of my mind.
Yep.
And then it also kind of talks about agency and how we have agency of ourselves. And this is the concept that probably a couple of years ago, I really started digging into just when thinking about like my calendar and managing my calendar instead of letting my calendar manage me. But when I think about the concept of agency, before I read this article, I always thought about it from the context of like what I choose. I have agency of myself. I didn't like make that connection internally to I have agency over the way that I think. And so I love that they bring in to the conversation, like you are in control of your thoughts. Your thoughts are not in control of you. Now,
Right.
that doesn't mean that you're in control of every thought that pops into your head. You're just in control of how you respond, how you react, and what you do with them.
Right.
And so they talked about two things that happen to, I think, all of us. They certainly happen to me quite a bit. Rumination and catastrophizing. So rumination being you just sit and chew on something over and over and over again. You had that like really awkward, embarrassing moment and you just keep going over it over and over again. And then you catastrophize it like, not only was this awkward in the moment, but now my career is ruined because no one will ever see me as, as like a trusted source of information on XYZ. And I think we probably all at some level can relate to that. And so they give you some healthy steps in this article on how to avoid or get away from, walk yourself back from rumination and catastrophizing. Because when you get stuck in those two really normal thought patterns, that's what draws down your happiness. Yeah. And I love that they started by talking about that because I think just awareness of that is like the first step. What do you think?
I 100% agree. I actually wrote that down. Is that the way that this all works is, one, I appreciated them saying like this is common. This is not like and there is a healthy amount of it, right? Because those are also the things that help us know how to show up differently. How do we learn from something? It's like the process of ruminating on it, thinking about it, and going on that journey of like, okay, well, how will I do this differently in the future? Like there is a healthy amount of that to help us become who we are. But where it goes sideways is whenever we allow that to move into that catastrophe zone.
It dominates.
Right. And then that just starts taking up all this brain space, and then it's almost like it just starts spiraling out of control.
Like a snowball downhill.
Yes,
it just gathers speed and it becomes bigger, and that you become overwhelmed. And so the great news is that whether you've reached that point or if you're headed on that point, you can walk it back or prevent it. And this is it's a skill that you learn. It's like building a muscle. And so one of the first things that they talk about, and this is like not a new concept, it's something I have rolled my eyes at in the past, but it's explained in a bit of a different way, is gratitude. So, I do believe gratitude's really important. I have friends that do like gratitude journals and they journal every day. And, my therapist has mentioned that journaling would be great for me. And I'm just like, oh, wouldn't that be nice to be that person that just journals every day? And if you're doing this, I'm like not knocking you. I'm just probably jealous that you have found it a place in your life where you're doing this, because I do think it's a good practice. But you don't have to be the kind of person that sits down and writes out your gratitude feelings every day in order to practice gratitude. And what was really interesting to me, I don't know if you've ever heard it expressed in this way. They talked about gratitude in two different ways and how both of them actually impact you similarly. they talked about experienced gratitude and expressed gratitude.
Yep.
Have you ever heard that concept before?
I have. So where I work, we want gratitude and kindness is part of our values. And so in coming to that, we are we're a high science company. And so we've pulled in and talk about the importance of gratitude and kindness and how science is involved in it. And so actually, I was going to share with you.
You have a gratitude journal, don't you?
I do not have a gratitude journal, but I did write that down as like one of the things like that people could possibly do. But it could also look different for everyone, because when I think of a journal, when someone says a gratitude journal, I think of like going and getting like a binder or one of those spiral notebooks and then keeping your journal. I recently saw someone post on social media like a screenshot of what they consider their gratitude journal. And it's literally just their notes app in their phone with bullet points of the things that they're great, happy for, gracious. I don't know, like
they're grateful,
that's their grateful for. Thank you. Yes, they are grateful for. But there is a company that posted a really meaningful video, and it is a tearjerker. I highly recommend it. We've shared it many times at work, and it's by Soulpancake, which I love that name.
I love that too.
It's called An Experiment in Gratitude, The Science of Happiness. And we can drop a link.
Oh, we should drop that link in the comments too. I want to check that out.
But it clearly, it takes you on the journey of both of these routes, which I love, because you get to see it from the person who is expressing their gratitude, and then it flips and they are the person who is then giving gratitude. It's really, really good.
So the way that this article defines experienced gratitude is like when it's external. So it's you are experiencing somebody being grateful, honestly grateful for what you do. Yep. And they talk about this study of folks doing, think of it like call center work, where you have to get hung up on a lot, and outbound call center work. And those who had leaders who were expressing gratitude for the work that they were doing, tying back into the greater purpose of the work, were more effective than those who did not receive any of that, because they could say, okay, somebody is really appreciative of this work that I'm doing. And so while it really sucks to get hung up on, I am continuing to be tied back to like the purpose. And so it keeps your mind in that place of happiness versus like, that place that most people would naturally tend to go to if you just keep getting hung up on and yelled at and having loud noises played in your ears and all kinds of things. And then the other kind of gratitude, the expressed gratitude, what was interesting about this was, to your point, whether you are expressing gratitude for somebody else or whether you are expressing gratitude about things that you appreciate for yourself, that actually brings a level of happiness and higher productivity. Yeah. So if you find yourself in this place where you're just kind of overwhelmed by how you're feeling and it's kind of a negative situation, it doesn't mean you have to be grateful for that situation. Just go find things you can be grateful for.
Right. And exactly.
I know when I started, I used to, I need to get back consistently to this, but before the pandemic, I started pushing myself to go on a 5K walk in the morning. And when I first started doing that, I remember I was talking to you a lot of those mornings, and I didn't want to be doing it. I would do my mantras while I would go on my walk. And I remember I would say like, I want to be grateful for these legs because I know that I can't take them for granted. And I am grateful that they can take me on this walk right now. So I'm not grateful that I'm on this walk, but I am grateful that I have legs that can take me on this walk today, because I am not going to take that for granted. And it did put me immediately into a better headspace, instead of thinking, I didn't want to get up this early and it's cold outside and it's all these things. Instead, thinking about what can I be grateful for in this moment. It totally just shifts your mental position. So gratitude was one.
Yeah.
Oh, go
And
ahead.
just real quick, like so I read this article several days after you had sent it to me, but in reflecting on it, someone had shared with me, one of my coworkers had shared with me earlier this week about the place where she was when she was an intern and when they hired her full time. I guess like the leader of the organization sent her a handwritten note saying, welcome to the team. We're happy to have you. You did such great work, and like bullet pointed out things that they had contributed to the organization while an intern, and that has led to them becoming an employee. And that person still like it impacts them on a daily basis, and it is now also set the bar for them to think of like this is a quality of a good leader. And so I just think like that impact, it doesn't really talk about like
Yeah.
the lasting impact of it, because it's experienced, right? But I do think like it was a good example as I was thinking back on it, like, wow, this person told me this, and like it happens, like it truly does make an impact.
To save all of those notes. I have little notes from my career that have been given to me,
Uh-huh.
and I save them and I take them with me everywhere I go. And I should make a practice of like reading through them more often when
Yeah.
I'm feeling low or something. But I do, when I do go back and look through them, it is like wow, like even if it was they say your compliments or your gratitude should always be specific, but even if it was unspecific, like it still means something to me to
Right.
have that like handwritten, like, hey, I really appreciated your help. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, absolutely. So the next concept that they talk about is self-compassion. And self-compassion to me feels like just such an ambiguous, unreachable topic. We've talked about be kind to yourself and like
Yeah.
leaning into that, which is one part of this. There's an author, her name is Kristin Neff, and she wrote a book. I think the book may actually be titled Self-Compassion, or Self-Compassion is
Yeah.
definitely in the title. Um, and she talks about self-compassion. And in this article, they break it down into kind of three different sections. So, again, what I appreciate about this is like they're the feelings, which I don't necessarily immediately connect to. How do I make that happen? And so it's offering like the logic behind how do you connect and understand to
Right.
that? How do you connect to that and understand? And so it really, all of it just focused on like how to not judge yourself, how to be self-compassion. How do you not judge yourself?
Right.
When you think about self-compassion, it's like removing judgment. And I don't know about you, but there is always this internal critic that is happening inside of my head, just constant judgment of my own self. Um, and so they talked about three different ways to kind of manage that inner critic, and how to practically not be in that judgment place. So the first one, mindfulness, which I really tag as awareness. So being aware when it's happening.
Yep.
The second one is common humanity, and that concept of like, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. Like everybody
Right.
experiences these things. And so it's actually fine. How many times have I called you and like needed to talk through something and been like, oh my God, I can't even believe that this has got me so worked up. And you're like, well, I think that's probably fair or realistic or practical, or, whether you believe in it or not.
I absolutely believe it, because I think exactly what you said earlier about like the feelings perspective. I think there are people who like the feelings become so overwhelming, like
Yes.
that's what gets you sidetracked, versus those who take more of that philosophical thinker, like whatever, and then that takes you like a different path. And so I think it's just understanding wherever you may be, it's like, how do you come back to that place where you can objectively look at the situation and just kind of pull yourself back together. So a lot of my career has been that, like helping people through those things. And so again, like as I was reading this, all things and questions and stuff that I've talked people through, but didn't really have an article like this at the time that I could send them.
Intellectually, like break it down. And the third aspect that she talks about, or they talk about, that she references, is self-kindness. And so all of these things feel like great things to strive for: mindfulness, common humanity, self-kindness. But they still felt a little bit untouchable to me. Like, great, those are great concepts, I'm bought in, but I'm not quite sure how I can apply those. What does that actually mean? How do I step into that? So I'm like on the optimism side, but not really on the hope side yet, because I don't know how to apply this. And I obviously didn't read the book. I'm sure that the book, details this.
It probably does a little bit more than like the article mentioned.
The little paragraph mentioned in the article, yeah. But what was interesting is that they talked about these studies that were done, because this is something that's been studied over and over again. This is not just like, oh, hey, here's what we think. Philosophy is like actually studied. And people that practice self-compassion experience increased happiness. They experience increased results, like marked actual in studies, increased results.
Yep.
Increased, and those increased results are based on the effort, because they are actually applying a different level of effort because of them practicing these things and being able to kind of manage their mental state. And then increase in relationship experience. So like you have better relationships with your spouse when you both practice this self-compassion, which was, really interesting. And so then I was like, great. So how do I do this?
Where's the instruction manual? I still haven't found it yet.
I'm bought in. I'm prepared. How many classes of yoga do I have to take before I am a relaxed person? So the next section of the article says, okay, here's how you do it. You stop ruminating. And I'm like, great. We've all arrived here, but how do I stop ruminating? And here's where we get into the like actual, practical, applicable tactics. That gratitude is certainly an actual applicable tactic, right? But like, how do you practice self-compassion? So in order to stop ruminating, it talks about how you need to practice, like there are several different tactics that you can practice to have self-distance. So I love what you said just a couple minutes ago about getting some perspective. It's really hard to have perspective when you're like right up in your feelings.
When you're in the thick of it.
And I don't know, as you read the article, if this stood out to you, but I had not kind of heard somebody explain some of these concepts for how to self-distance before. Was this new to you?
I'm telling you, mind-blowing. Like, stuff that it was recently, and I know how silly this is going to sound, but it was recently that not, like I started asking people, like, what do you hear? Like, how do you experience things? Like, I don't know. It dawned on me that not everyone has the same internal dialogue. So I know. And again, like something that I should have known in all of my years of living, but for some reason, like it just didn't hit me until a few years ago. And then I started asking people. And I had never heard it put in this framework that they describe. And I'll let you describe what it is, the self-distancing, so that way we can talk a little bit more about it. But I found it eye-opening, and it was beautifully done.
Yeah. So they talked about distance self-talk. So this is talking at yourself, not just talking to yourself. And so, I am a big fan of like affirmations and mantras, and those typically are I statements. I have everything I need to be successful. I am kind. I am grateful. I am a good friend. Like I am, these things, these I am statements. which, by the way, I don't think this article is saying is bad.
No.
I think those are still fantastic practices. So if you're doing them, I would highly suggest you keep them up. If you're not doing them, I would suggest you try them because they've been really helpful for me. But what I haven't heard before is this idea of talking to yourself in the third person. So literally saying
You've never
your own
heard
name.
of that before?
Okay, well, no, I've heard of it before. I haven't heard of it as a concept for how to stop ruminating, like how to get out of your own head. That I've never heard of before. I've never had somebody give me this advice to, which when I step back and think about it, it's totally practical. What I do in order to do this is I like call you and get you to tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we give advice, it's not as if we're telling the other person something that they've never heard of before. It's just that we're outside of the situation and they're not. And so you will literally say to me, Jen, and then that stops me. And then you'll like tell me what it is I need to hear. And so what it's saying is basically you can do that for yourself. So instead of saying, something like, I am going to do this successfully, you can say, Jen, you are going to accomplish this successfully.
Right.
And that actually has a different level of impact.
Correct.
So that's a tool I'm putting in my toolbox. And now the neighbors will think I'm way wacky or that I'm talking to somebody else named Jen. Which is great.
Whichever journey you want to go on. But this to me was fascinating, and I had to reread it a couple of times to like wrap my head around it, because that is what I already do. And so when I
talk
think
to yourself
about
in the third person already,
I do. Like when I say that I have an internal dialogue, like that's what it is.
I'm
like
just
yes.
like in my dreams, where my dream is never like third person. It's always me as the main character, bringing that main character energy.
You sure are.
It's always from my vantage point or driver's seat. I'm never like having a dream from somebody else's vantage point or driver's seat. It's always me, and I'm always in the dream. If there's not a dream that I'm not in, I am the main character in every dream, and it is told from only my perspective. You can believe whatever you want to believe about me because of that, but it is the way that I'm made. I didn't choose this.
Okay, so I want to double click on that, because that was an aha that I had when I was going through this. That is how we were made. Like that's how we're made. It is. And so like I started like trying to think about did anyone teach me that? Did anyone
maybe because you learn like what you learn as a very small child. Like think about how you learn the English language. Like the majority of the language that you learn for most people happens in those very early formative years. Right? Like you learn all of these thought patterns in a very early formative years, and then they just evolve. And you can certainly intervene or learn new things. But yeah. So now I'm curious. You just naturally speak to yourself in the third person in your mind. So do you dream in third person?
My dream, I don't know. I mean, they're kind of always all over the place. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's like I'm watching me as like the world goes on.
Do you have dreams that you're not in? Is it possible that people dream dreams that they're not a part of? Is that a thing?
Yeah, because I can think of like dreams that I've told Frank before that I don't think I was part of, or maybe I was like a silent observer or something. But like,
I'm going to add this to the topics list. I'm going to add this to, if y'all have some good like resources or things we should be looking at or reading or places we should go to learn more about this, I am like suddenly fascinated.
Yes, please share those, because I do think we've figured something out about ourselves in like reading this, because I specifically like try to put myself in the situation, because I also say this, like I do the same thing of like, you got like, I can do this, I got this, like I say those things, but then I try, like, so then I put myself in this place of like going through a tough time or a tough situation. Like, what do I say to myself? And it's interesting. I do switch to that third person.
You
Chris,
practice
you
it.
got this. Chris, we
I
can
love
do
that.
this. Like,
I
and
love that.
and so I had no concept, or I had a concept, but I guess I didn't truly understand what my thought pattern was and how I did it until like I was reading through this article, which is why I had to read through that section a couple of times, because
Yeah.
my mind already, I guess, kind of does that shift
Well, yeah,
automatically.
it's working for you, so you keep
Yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
it, right?
Yeah, I'm
So
absolutely.
so there's another form of like distance uh ability that will help you distance from the situation. Another tactic here, which is and this one I've heard of and kind of try and practice for myself, but sort of in probably a more lazy way. And it's distance reflection. So thinking about like 10 years in the future, literally 10 years in the future, what would my 10-year in the future self say about this? And just the whole tactic of that, that's something we use at work too sometimes. Like, is
Yeah,
this going to matter in 10 years? Are we talking about something that is like really matters, or that, maybe we're getting stuck about something that doesn't
right.
matter? But also like using that, it's to help you stop ruminating. So like, why am I going over and over and over this conversation in my head? If it does matter 10 years from now, then I better figure out something.
Right.
But what would my 10-year from now self tell me to do about this situation? Now, you don't have all the knowledge that you're going to have 10 years from now,
No.
but I think the point of this exercise is to stop the thought pattern that is circular and give yourself that distance or that perspective so that you can approach it more pragmatically. So,
Yeah.
I like that one. And then the next one I would just characterize as visualization. But visualization kind of with some plus on it. So they talk about like actually what I took away was the difference between manifestation versus visualization.
Yeah.
So they talk about manifestation, and my paraphrase here is that manifestation really is like magical thinking. So manifestation is saying that, you believe something is going to happen and then just believing that you're going to speak it
Right.
into existence. So external factors, again, like back to the optimism versus, and this is why realists is what they would, I think, self-coin, and I would call them pessimists. My husband and I have this conversation all the time. Why optimists can kind of be annoying to them is because it's magical thinking. Like, who's going to just make it all okay?
Right.
And then that's where like the idea of hope comes in. So, manifestation, just speaking something into existence, is that belief that you don't have to do anything, but just speak it and it's going to happen. Whereas visualization is like actually walking through the situation, seeing your outcome, and you kind of notice on your journey what it takes to get there. But you also probably notice some obstacles. And so they talk about mental contrasting and this, like, what are the positive outcomes? And then what are the obstacles you might achieve? And athletes like use this. And then you add in this implementation intention of like an if then statement. So if this obstacle occurs, here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then that's what ends up kind of, just to tie it all back, like that's what ends up taking you down the path of hope versus optimism. And Chris, I always love to be in the driver's seat. I love to be able to have some kind of control over a situation, because when I feel out of control, I just feel so untethered and really uncomfortable. And so this
Yep.
idea of like, how do I put myself back in the driver's seat over my feelings? Like, how do I have a plan? So that if something
Right.
terrible happens, which is outside my control, I at least can control my responses.
Yep.
So this for me, that was my final point on the article. I don't know what else you have to add to it, but I just thought these are some really practical ways that this year as I said, my intention was to really focus on self-kindness, which is a part of self-compassion, and to just be in a better headspace, regardless of my circumstances, regardless of where I'm at in life. I want to get back to just enjoying the art of living and all that that entails,
Yeah.
which is really imperfect. And so how can I do that? And I feel like these concepts like are super relatable ways to just have happiness come from within.
Yeah, I think it is a something that people probably already use some of these tools, but don't realize it because depending on the situation that you're in, it shows up differently. So, like when they were talking about the distancing when it comes to like thinking of your future self, like the future you 10 years, I think I heard it by a comedian once or in some sitcom or something, and I thought it was funny, and so I like started picking it up and using it. Where they are like, "Oh, well, we're definitely not setting up future Chris for success if we make this choice." Like, so a lot of times, like whenever I'm in certain scenarios, I'm like, "Okay, we're really gonna set future Chris up well. We're gonna do great," and that helps. But then there are other things that like you do or don't, and you're like, oh, well, they'll figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
when we get there, when we do have that additional knowledge and those lived experiences to help get us over that hurdle. The other one that they talked about that I really liked and advice that I am like always giving to people is when it comes to catastrophizing things, like finding that balance. So if you're going to spend so much time chasing that negative thought pattern, which is very easy, like it is the automatic for many people to go down. A way to stop yourself is to try to think the opposite way. So
like what else could be true? Yeah,
exactly. What, like if this is worst case scenario, let's also go best case scenario to help find
let's
that
be
balance.
honest. If I am in the vortex spiral of ultimate rumination, Jen, literally my answer to your question is nothing else could be true. The only thing that could be true is that I've ruined my career forever and I might as well just crawl in a hole and go to bed.
So that leads me to my next point that I had written down here is don't be discouraged. Something that I feel like it did really good at the end is don't be discouraged by negative talk because everybody has it.
Love that.
I think
so that's the compassion, right?
Yep.
You're not
but
worse
I think
than
it's
everybody
also
else.
Have trusted advisors, friends, coworkers, family members, whatever, that when you find yourself in those situations, because yes, like best case scenario, I start down this path, I remind myself about self-compassion and I can pull myself back from it. I have found a career where I get to help people go on that path, like go like find the other things. And so don't underestimate like you going and talking to someone and taking them on that journey with you, because they can help you change your perspective, ask questions that can help get you out of that mindset and hopefully can help start moving you in the right direction. However, what I did find is some of the harder things that people have to do. It's easy to talk about, but the actual doing, it becomes the obstacle, out of fear, out of whatever. And so then the question becomes, well, how can I help hold you accountable to do what you say you're going to do? So I think I think this is
sometimes it's just, well, yeah. And I will say, I will follow that up just to say one of the things that I tell myself a lot is that when I find myself, kind of in the thinking and the feeling and then struggling with the taking the action, I break it down to, okay, it's logic. Like that's a surprise that would be where I would go. I take it down to, okay, well, I'm not happy with the place that I'm in now, which reasons that I want something to change. And what I know is that change is not comfortable. So if I'm waiting for this action to become comfortable, I'm never going to experience a different reality. Like
future Jen will have to figure this out.
Change happens at the edges or far outside your comfort zone. Change does not happen in the middle of your comfort zone. So if you're waiting for it to be comfortable, it's not going to happen. I think that the times I've experienced change where I wasn't understanding that it was uncomfortable was like ignorance. Like I did not know what I was getting myself into. And people would say, "Oh my gosh, you're so brave." And I would say, "I don't understand why they're saying."
I'm confused. Thank you, but I'm confused.
And I think I probably would like verbalize that. Like, I think I'm just ignorant. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. Why is this brave?
Yeah. I will say in circumstances where, I think I took a class around change management or something. And in that class, it talked about specifically like change is hard, whether it's good change, bad change, it's different. And so it is innately hard for us to accept it. So when we go back to the putting yourself in third person, I started finding myself in situations, Chris, why are we struggling? Or why are we upset? Why are whatever? Is it because it truly as bad or as hard as you're saying it is? Or is it that it's new because you're building a muscle? And like, that to me is one of those opportunities to kind of use a combination of things to just help find that balance, because self-compassion is the perfect way to say what this is about, because it is hard. It is not stuff that is unfortunately like innately in all of us to do. And I think it just adds more tools to the toolbox of things you can pull out whenever you need them. It was so good. I thank you so much for sharing it and bringing it to this forum, because like I said, I emotionally felt connected with it, because it is all stuff like, it just feels like years of learning that I've gone through, and it's all in one place. And I found it beautiful.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just, I think, you know, super important to think about what do I want for this time that I have left? What do I want for this year? And for me, I want to be happy regardless of what happens. I want to be happy. And so Dr. Laurie Santos, I'm super intrigued. I'm really interested. Probably going to be checking out more of some of her work and what she has to offer, because I'm incredibly impressed. I think she's like super young too. I don't know. You can fact check me on that, but like just really impressed with the work that she's doing. And I can see how she has like the most popular course in all of Yale history, because like it's not like rocket science concepts. These concepts are a lot of things that we've heard, but they're just like broken down in ways that I think are super practical and relatable. And for me, it takes some of that fuzzy ambiguity out of, well, that sounds nice, but I have no idea how to apply that to myself. So just super appreciative for the framework that she's offered for how to kind of really make this practical. If you find this helpful, if you have something to add to the topic, I am always crowdsourcing more ideas on how I can have a happier me. Or if, there's a story that you want to share related to what we've talked about today, definitely send it over. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want more of this kind of content, where we're talking about why no one else is talking about the dangers of sneezing while driving, or or how to have a happier you, then definitely hit subscribe and keep checking us out.
Yes, we are happy to have you be part of this conversation, and we very much so look to future conversations.
Awesome. Well, have an amazing day, and we'll catch you next time on Chris and Jen in the Morning.
where it's always morning somewhere. Later.
Later.